June 4th, Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee meeting. Well, I don't have an agenda because Pat didn't leave one. I didn't print it.
Ms. Bolton has also declared the meeting as well.
Okay, hi, Eve.
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry I'm not there. I was planning on being there, and then my neighbor really needed my car to take her kid to urgent care. So here I am.
No worries. You're here now. You and Ben both are via telecommunication today.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right, we were just starting with our first agenda item, outdoor education. Mr. Trump.
Yay.
Right on. Do we have Ryan on the call yet, Rob? Okay, we'll make do. So thank you for inviting us back to update on the CPS Outside project. We were thankful to have the opportunity to present to the whole board last fall. We're going to give you some updates. CPS Outside is a network of organizations and individuals that is trying to ensure equity when it comes to outdoor access, educational opportunities on and around our campuses, and envisioning a school district where all students have access to outdoor experiences and environmental education. We are going to remind, next slide please. On the one that says alignment to the strategic plan. Thank you. We did align our work to the strategic plan, primarily around student-centered decision making, but also, of course, around health and safety and community engagement. And next slide, please. Our theory of change suggests that by some of the projects in our project portfolio, we're going to get more kids outside, that we have all schools actively engaged with a network partner, increasing that to 90%, 100% by the end of the next school year, and then every student has at least one outdoor educational opportunity per year. And then one of our increasing goals is to increase access to environmentally focused or green jobs, which is an exciting part of our work. Next slide, please. Okay. We asked in our budget request for this year for some funding to help reach some of these goals, including we want to ensure that every building has an outdoor learning environment, whether it's an outdoor classroom or access to some place where, at minimum, students can go outside and have a place to learn outside. So some minor capital improvements in equipment, some professional development for teachers to build capacity around their comfort level and the safety and security of taking students outside. We want to increase programming for every school opportunity, including both in school and when it's a reality for us, again, the opportunity to do field trips that are connected to our curriculum, and then to increase access to after school, break day, and summer programming. We did ask for some funding, but we are also constantly, many of our partners have great opportunities for co-funding through grants that they do the work on, and partnerships that they help co-fund some of these opportunities as well. Next slide, please. One of our biggest funding pieces is a very exciting new relationship we started this year. We won an opportunity to participate in a technical assistance program through the Cities Connecting Children to Nature, which is part of the Green Schoolyard network. You can see that there are about 10 schools across the country that are involved in this cohort this year. We will be learning with them and from them, as well as school districts that have gone through this in previous years, to see how to increase access to our green schoolyards and to increase access to educational opportunities in and around our schoolyard. So next slide, please.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Hey. Sorry for the delay. Can I jump in? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Mooney Bullock from Green Umbrella. Good to see you. So the Green Schoolyards Technical Assistance is very focused on this district-wide, equity-based, open access approach to getting kids out into natural spaces. The next slide is great. And so that's one of the things that, we wanted to just raise as something that we're really going to be focusing on in the next year is really looking at how do we prioritize sites to kind of create these transformed green spaces at schools based on data, both from the school community and the neighborhoods surrounding them, to make sure that we're really prioritizing the school campuses that can serve neighborhoods in a way that increases access to green space and all of this awesome outdoor learning opportunities. Next slide, please. We're also ramping up efforts in after-school and break day programming outdoors. We were able to connect a number of our program partners to Summer Scholars programming for this year and provided some encouragement and cheerleading to try to get more and more of them to participate, since we knew the demand was very high. We're also excited to see some exciting summer camp type programming happening at Roberts Academy this summer in July with Imago, Clicky, and a couple of other partners, creating these awesome camp experiences for students right at their schools. And we'll be looking at how do we pilot some of the additional break day and after school programming in the upcoming school year. Next slide. All right, back to you, Dave.
Right on. So moving into another arm of the work around helping support teachers in their comfort level and their experience in doing education outside. We are sharing some of our PD opportunities, some videos and one-pagers with Launch Ed and the curriculum department that then can be distributed out to teachers, or those opportunities can be shared with teachers. Next year, we've got 7 CPS teachers in Cincinnati Nature Center's cohort to do a year-long training on native gardening and things like that they can then come back to their schools and help spread to other teachers as well. We're still working on recruiting teachers, figure out what kind of incentives we need for teachers to take some PD offerings. We know we have limited opportunities to deliver PD, but to make sure that if we are providing these spaces and opportunities to get kids outside, that the teachers are in the place they need to be in order to support that. And the final big piece of that with the curriculum department, and this is a big part of the work, particularly, next slide, please, with science and social studies, is saying that we are aligning our programming to standards, and it is going to live in our curriculum guides. We heard that message last fall, that if it is an opportunity that's good for one school or one class, that it's good for all of our students in all of our classes. So we want to be sure that teachers have access to that. And that is an ongoing piece of work. Right now, Liz Wolf and I are working with the curriculum team to gather data to say where our partners programming fits into our curriculum guides and making sure those are put in there. We know that one of the challenges, a lot of our partners don't have the capacity for a school district our size to come all at once or to provide services all at once, but we have enough partners, enough creativity that we can ensure that we can increase capacity to make sure that all of our kids have access to the curriculum that's integrated with the outdoor programming. Next slide.
All right, so we have a lot going on right now, and we're really continuing to ramp up this work with the district and amongst our partners. So we are currently building our capacity to both assess where the schools are in terms of their campuses and what small and big changes we can make to make sure that kids can get outside with their teachers in after-school programs. And so we have, as David mentioned, been pursuing funding to help increase our capacity to do this and just move more quickly. We're very cognizant of the fact that there is federal money coming down the pike that is specifically designated for making sure kids are healthy at school. And so how do we make sure that we have as many projects lined up as possible that can help feed into that pipeline? We have a set of working groups who are actively moving all of these strategies forward. We would love to explore the possibility of a board-level resolution or similar policy in support of district-wide green schoolyards, specifically ones that are open access. We are really thankful for the support of Superintendent Mitchell signing the Green Schoolyards Pledge, and we just want to make sure that that support continues on for many years to come. We also are curious to explore what data collection processes are currently in place in CPS that we could tap into, as well as creating shared data collection systems amongst our partners so that we can make sure to track the outcomes of all of this amazing partnership work that we're doing together. And I'd love to hear what questions you have.
Board committee members, Bolton or Linda, do you have any comments or feedback, questions?
I do, but I'll let Ben go first if he wants to. Well,
Ben?
well, I can start then, if that's okay, Madam Chair. Of course, I'm extremely supportive of this initiative, which is about almost 3 years old now, and it really began from the community generation, so it's even more significant and more important. I have a couple of things that I'd like to say. I know that it was mentioned on the first slide that there would be minor capital improvements. And the reality is, I don't think that they're going to be minor. Looking from the standpoint of the budget and finance, it would seem to me this is the year or so that we will have the money to do this. If indeed we can use the federal dollars that Ryan mentioned, and I think we can, if we make it too incremental or we spend a great deal of time prioritizing, I think that's very important. But this would be the budget year that we would have the money, and perhaps 3 or so months into the next budget year. So I would say that if we're going to be doing something like creating outdoor space for learning at every one of our schools, some of them will be major, some of them will be minor, but the total is not going to necessarily be a minor facilities expense. I think it'll be significant if we do it. You know, Mrs. Bates is all about the carriage house at Fairview. There's other places where we have some outdoor, but we need more. We need a path or whatever. I'm thrilled that the group that is going to help figure out where and how and whatever. But I think there'll be people on this board that will be wanting to use those CARES dollars, particularly for this, if indeed it's allowed, and I believe that it is. And I've asked the treasurer about that. So I don't think that's going to be minor capital improvement. The other piece that I would suggest is, again, I believe in all the pockets and buckets that were mentioned regarding PD and getting the kids outside and curriculum especially. And I know that our interim superintendent has been very supportive of this from the get-go when it was first shared with her. So I'm really encouraged that there will be great stability with that. The other piece, though, is I do still think we ought to be merging this and having some sort of, and maybe we already are, some cross dialogue, if you will, between this group and the curriculum group with the career group. Because in the later grades, that's very often where the screen commitment is. And that is a giant growing thing, whether it's Gamble High School that the chairman is so committed to, or whether it's Aiken, my alma mater. I'd catch that wave and have more dialogue between the career folk efforts and this group's efforts. And I would be pushing for a significant amount of the money for the facilities outdoor. And facilities is in quotes, because this group has taught me what they may mean about facilities. We're not like building giant buildings or even smaller buildings, but whatever it fits the campus and the community. But I would be pushing for more dollars on the facilities and more dialogue between this group and the career folks that are really heading into big stuff on agriculture and green. Thank you.
And can I just address that very briefly?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for raising that on all fronts. We definitely are talking to the careers team as well. I did not incorporate that into the presentation today because we didn't have anything super concrete yet to share, but it is definitely progressing, and some amazing opportunities I think are going to be emerging there.
Great. Thank you.
Our facilities, we have a representative from Robin Branch from facilities on the technical assistance team for Cincinnati. So she's part of those conversations as well.
Yeah, and I would imagine what happens there it makes a difference to how much money we give it, and the widest range possible of what your vision might be would help us better understand how much money we actually may need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lindy, are you on the call?
Hey, Pam, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Oh, good, good. I could hear you all before, but clearly you could not hear me. I just think the work sounds very exciting, and I want to apologize if Ryan or Dave shared this while I was fighting with my internet issues, but are there some specific ways this group could be helpful for you all?
Yeah, thank you for asking. We definitely would encourage, continued support of budgetary items related to this work, both in the operating and the capital budgets, and would love to talk more. We have certainly had lots of conversations on the operating side, but would love to talk more about the capital, and that's, I know, should happen very soon. We also would love to take a look at a district-wide open access policy for the schools. Now, we understand that because of the community learning centers, this is basically an open access type of situation. But we just want to make sure that the district is comfortable with this concept, that as we, improve and make these schoolyards even more beneficial for students, that community residents are just as welcome to use them in the after school hours as students are to use them during the day. So that's something that we just want to raise as a key priority for this work moving forward.
I appreciate that, Ryan, a lot. Can I just check on the budget thing for a second? Is it the case that these things are already in the works, and so as we get presentations on the updated budget, we would see this part of the budget come through in that, or is that those conversations haven't started yet and should start?
I'm going to let Dave answer that one.
Go ahead, please.
The budgets, we submitted the budgets, it's in the curriculum budget. So it's in front of PLT. It's part of the strategic planning. So the presentation that Laura did with Jen at CAB had the outdoor education budget on there. So the budget has been submitted, but we are in the process of finalizing all priorities to make sure we have a balanced budget for the start of the school year. So the money is allocated in the curriculum budget.
Great. Thank you very much, Gianni.
Committee Member Bolton.
Yeah, on that, I appreciate Johnny mentioning that. Is the line item that we're focused on is part of the Old Shore, New Shore? Was that 765,000? Or what? Yes.
Yes.
Was facilities figured in with that?
Some, yes.
Some. The minor capital improvements was.
Yes, we were when we prepared this, we were thinking of we might need to move a few hay bales or buy some yellow safety vests for kids to go outside. We weren't thinking of, like you mentioned, Ms. Bolton, the large scale capital improvements. But
And that's why I'm asking, because I think that was a generous amount of money for doing what we're doing, and I'm almost glad that some of the facilities piece is not figured in that would be coming separately here, so to speak. But again, that would emphasize the need for the group to be doing, accelerate or at least approach broadly the whole priority piece.
What would be the best way for me to follow up regarding the capital budget?
Finance committee would be worrying about capital budget particularly. But remember, this capital budget this year and this coming year also is CARES budget. So I just, if the administration can keep that to the front, I know we have lots of dibs on that CARES money that are crucial and some on a higher priority than maybe this would be. But from a standpoint of an initiative, this will be the year that you would have the most opportunity to create those outdoor spaces, and beyond moving David says bales of hay or putting a ribbon around a tree. That's so this could be huge.
All right, any more comments? I'm going to wrap it up if nobody else has any more comments. I would agree with Board Member Bolton about the federal dollars to be kind of looked at as maybe helping to expand some of these outdoor classroom projects. One of the things I do have a question about, and congratulations on being selected for the Green School. That's big. When I look at the map, this is a big progressive movement that I see happening across the nation. But with regards to some of our Vision 2020 schools, I do know of one school, Pleasant Hill Academy, that's an environmental science school. And as we are expanding across the district, how do we do a deeper dive into that school that has Vision 2020 for this particular project? How do we do a deeper dive? Because I know the partnership with Ohio State is not as consistent. So how do we expand continuity, even with this on a broader scale, but specifically for this particular school?
I think specifically it's around the curriculum that was mentioned, that we are integrating this, so that if it's good for one school, it's good for all. So the integration of curriculum is one way. I've been hands-on with Ms. McDowell in getting their outdoor playground up and running. Our curriculum department has been supporting that effort. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, they may even have a facilitator on staff there who can connect with us if support is needed.
Okay.
But a lot of that Vision 2020 work is through ILT.
Mm-hmm.
So just connecting us, we can definitely follow up if there is more support needed. But I think the real work is in the curriculum and supporting them on how to deliver instruction in an outdoor space.
Okay. But I think that's all it will be, because I'm not sure if that something is missing there regarding that
So
school.
David, if you can just make notes to yourself and follow up with the principal to see what is needed. But
Okay.
they have done some tremendous things
Mm-hmm.
over there the last 2 years in the Vision 2020 with outdoor learning. So we may even learn a lot from them.
Right.
With that
Right.
space. Yeah.
In addition to, thank you. In addition to, I agree with Ms. Bolton about the agriculture and agribusiness and a career pathway. That's huge. Anything with the agribusiness and of course Gamble, my beloved Gamble, with the agriculture focus. So this is good work. I look forward to hearing more about some of the outcome. One other thing I had a question about, when we talk about data collection and measure, is there any way to see a measurement regarding socio-emotional and experience with outdoor, a connector for that? Because I find that there's a rich connection between the socio-emotional competencies and outdoor learning, or just being in nature. As a clinician, it is. But I'm saying if we can find a measurement that could enlist some of that.
I think that speaks to a good opportunity to connect with Positive School Cultures group and say where does this fit in, or what parts of your data fits in with what we're working on.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments, committee members? Ms. Bolton, is your hand raised? Go ahead.
Yes, very quickly. I think that what the interim superintendent has said is correct. The curriculum can be our guide, part of that priority piece. It won't just be the campus, but maybe we mostly prioritize or initially prioritize where the curriculum is already kind of built there. And then I think Ryan, somebody asked everybody to board resolution. So that would be an action item if they can figure out what to write and what needs to be said. Madam Chair, that give that to you. That would be a way to go. There's probably support for it.
Okay. All righty. We're going to move on to accelerated learning.
Okay, thank you. And Rob, as you pull that up, you can go straight to the slides and the year one celebration. We'll get started. So we are excited to be moving into year 2 of our accelerated learning work. And I believe it was last Student Achievement Committee when board member Lindy started asking about some of the current research from professional development and ed reports that sparked this presentation. So I wanted to just start with some celebrations. In this past year, despite the pandemic and starting in distance learning and moving to various learning models, we did lift off the ground our work to accelerate versus remediate. We worked with and received a grant with the Ohio Department of Education to send all of our principals and assistant principals through Unbound Ed. This came from a previous math grant with the Gates Foundation, where we had sent some principals and teachers, and they loved it and really saw the impact of the things that they learned back in their schools as a result. And then another big celebration is that we were able to successfully translate all of our curriculum to launch out of school issues this year. Next slide, please. So a little bit of history. In 2017, 2018, we were able to adopt curriculums after almost a 10-year gap. Previous to that adoption cycle, we had been using textbook series that were aligned to the old standards. When the state of Ohio chose to adopt the Common Core standard, much of the curriculums out there didn't match up to those new standards. And so the district decided not to adopt until 2018. Fine arts and social studies led the way. We then adopted English language arts, science, PE, and health the following year. Last year, 3 days before we went to, before we started learning from home, we adopted the mathematics curriculum. And this year we did choose to take a 1-year break due to budgeting constraints. The model for the adoption cycles is kind of outlined below. Oops, sorry, I'll go back. Sorry. We develop must-haves collectively with our teachers. We always use our ed reports data if that's available for the curriculum. One of our must-haves is that they are all green on the ed reports. We provide training for our selection committee, and so in collaboration with council, we have principals, teachers who go through EQUIP training, which is figuring out like what are those things, components that are necessary for a high quality curriculum. And then we work to engage teachers, families, and principals. We believe that this is a critical element to decrease inequities. Next slide, please. Part of this work over the years has also resulted in defining what curriculum means. So in Cincinnati Public, we want to have standards aligned, high quality, on grade level curriculum that has 4 necessary components: the content, the resources, the instructional best practices, and measurement. This is also something that has been a new shift because we, the curriculums that we have adopted actually have those scaffolds to personalize instruction for each learner. Next slide, please. This is a quote that we have adopted from our partnership with children. The system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. And because of that, we want to create new, and we want to disrupt a system where all of our children are not currently performing. And so this statement is the statement that grounds and guides all of our work to accelerate. And that is to figure out the circumstances that are keeping our students from receiving that high quality standards aligned curriculum. Next slide, please. This table has been inserted to show the key differences from teaching and learning that is centered around remediating versus teaching and learning that is centered around accelerating. For example, when you're talking about basic skills, you want to make sure that those are hand-picked just in time, opposed to just taught just because you think that all of the students missed the fourth quarter of instruction. But other key things to call out is prior knowledge being connected to the new information. That we want to make sure that this is all connected to the core class, specifically our interventions and tutoring, and that the pacing and direction is active, fast-paced, hands-on, to learn on time with their peers. Next slide, please. Like Dave shared, his theory of change for the outdoor partners, we have developed our theory of change for accelerated learning as well. This ultimately will increase the percent of students who are at or above mastery on that grade level content in their 2-week curriculum-based assessments. The key conditions that we believe need to be in place for this to happen are things such as increasing affirming ways our students see themselves, sticking to grade level content, focusing on the instruction, not the pace, ensuring inclusion of each and every learner, and identifying and addressing gaps in the learning through tiers of instruction. Over the course of the year, we have co-created this with our teachers and people doing the research. So, next slide, please. This is a great graphic of what that looks like. Acceleration is the top row, where you go into the upcoming year and you teach Unit 1 of that upcoming year, opposed to remediating prior years, which would inevitably perpetuate unfinished learning. The key question then is, students could master this new unit if they just knew such and such. Next slide, please. We've talked a lot about curriculum mattering to accelerate learning. The way we teach it matters even more. And so we also have supports that we have embedded so that we clearly know what successful implementation looks like. We've built tools called the Evidence of Success for each of our adopted curriculums that outline what you might see and hear in successful implementation. We have developed planning protocols in collaboration with Unbound Ed, the professional development series that I mentioned earlier, outlining how to plan those 2-week cycles of accelerated learning. And we're excited to bring our coaching team in next year. Last year we had 3, and this upcoming year we have a few more who will help with the feedback for teachers, the modeling for teachers, and the planning for teachers. Next slide, please. Why 2-week cycles? So what we want to do is approach these curriculum-based assessments as temperature checks. These temperature checks, like you would think in the medical world, identify what those skills are that our students need. Like the medical world, then you do need the doctor to dig deeper and identify what is the cause. We need our teachers to have these temperature checks available to them so that they can also dig deeper and identify the cause. This comes from a recent study called Accelerate, Not Remediate, which I'll reference later. Next slide, please. We, through this accelerated learning work, have called 3 actions of our educators and us. The first one being find new affirming ways our students can see themselves and other cultures in their learning. Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop says when children cannot find themselves reflected in the books they read, or when the images they see are distorted, negative, or laughable, they learn a powerful lesson about how they are devalued in the society of which they are a part. And so this year, with our councils have done some amazing work to find new ways. We have social justice units that have been implemented this year, revised, and will be shared again next year. Our social studies team has found equitable representation and anti-racist lessons added to every unit in their social studies curriculum. And our ELA teams have increased every ELA unit with social justice and social emotional lessons, and a new text with Black and Latinx characters. We did this in collaboration with the public school culture team. Next slide, please. Our other two calls of action are to spend the vast amount of instructional time engaging students in on-grade level learning. The adoption series that I referenced earlier is really related to action 2. And the next piece I'm going to dig in is called action 3, addressing unfinished learning with precision, just in time, opposed to just in case. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give a little background on what tutoring has looked like in CPS so far. We do have a curriculum that has been built aligned to our adopted curriculum. That's related back to that table, that everything that we do, we want it to be connected to the core class. We have in the past offered professional development on how to use this tutoring curriculum for both paid and volunteer tutors. We have also in the past budgeted money for tutors that schools could hire. The reality is that year after year, that money is sometimes, the money is left unspent. It's difficult to find tutors who are able to do this work in the way that we want, we know that it makes an impact. And so I wanted to elevate that we do have reading specialists and have had reading specialists at that K-3 level who have yielded results in the past year. Next slide, please. So this is a draft outlining third grade reading proficiency over time. The black line on this is our state results over time. The blue is Cincinnati Public's. And this is alongside our other urban aids. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the gap that we are trying to close between our white and our black students. And next slide, please. So what's interesting about this most recent research about high dosage tutoring that I believe board member Lindy referenced a month ago is that dosage has been critical to our reading specialist success. Dr. Uma Kotogal, anytime we talk about our achievement results with reading specialists, she wants to know what's the dosage? What's the dosage that is needed to get results? And so this research, I won't read every bullet to you, comes most recently from the Ed Research for Recovery. It outlines that you can make gains of up to 3 to 15 months. You need 3 or more sessions or touch points per week. You need frequent assessments, and you need to be targeting those students that most need personalized instruction. And so our curriculum team has taken this research and embedded it into the way we have our math and reading specialists work outline. Next slide, please. So we have a 2080, I don't know,
Model.
2080 model, where our math and reading specialists work directly with teachers so that our teachers know how to accelerate learning and make sure that they are teaching on grade level, even when we do have some students who come in with unfinished learning. The 80% of their time then is centered around their 45 approximate student caseload, where they're intentionally and consistently supporting students using this high dosage tutoring research. Our reading specialists next year will target, thanks to the CARES Act dollars, kindergarten and first grade students, third grade, 6, 9, and 10 for reading, and then math, 3rd, 6th, and algebra 1. Next slide, please. And this slide just is the overall graphic of our process. We do have one-pagers that outline their roles and responsibilities. As a result of their work, what are the goals that they will meet with their students. In the first month, they use data, they identify their 45 student caseload, and they build schedules with their principals. Every week, they huddle together and share what the dosage and the achievement data looks like and what they're going to do in the next 5 days. They are in small cluster groups so that they can share and learn together, and then those each have a reading or math specialist that huddle weekly with the math and ELA managers. And again, we do use progress monitoring data and dosage. So wrapping it all up, next slide please, you'll see that all of this is centered around each and every student receiving high quality curriculum and instruction. This is tied into our one plan and EdStep's work with the state. It is also then tied up into our strategic plan where we will increase the number of students who are proficient in their core content areas so that they're prepared for enlist enrollment. That's it. Questions?
And I just want to say, I did ask Emily to do this presentation to give a full perspective of where we are. I know there's new members to SAC board members, but we are so excited about where we're headed. A lot of this stuff was put on pause. We didn't have the coaches to help teachers with PD. We didn't have the reading specialists, and the CARES dollars are supporting that work in first grade and kindergarten. And also, I just want to bring back, so when we talk about having kids prepared when they get to high school to take all these wonderful opportunities, we were behind in curriculum adoption 10 years. So SAC has been very influential in supporting the work of the curriculum department since I've been here and helping with adopting curriculum. I think now we're on to science next for next school year. But you will see the high results, there's no doubt in my mind, with the supports and help because we have the passion. And I'm not talking just solely about curriculum. Our teachers want this. They have been a part of this process. So we're just excited for the start of the school year to get results and close the gaps and to put in the forefront that we have to do something for our Black and brown kids. So we are open for any questions. So thank you, Emily, for putting this presentation together.
Committee members, questions, comments?
I'm happy to go, Pam.
Bolton?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
I'm also happy to follow you.
No, you go, Ben, you go.
Okay, that's great. And can people, I'm always nervous about my sound. Can people hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I think Tiana and Emily, thank you for putting this presentation together. I found it really exciting and really interesting. I thought that so many of the ways you talk about what matters in curriculum and the kinds of resources and assessments you want to be available for teachers, and just the care and the different stakeholder engagements and the rigor that you all have done around curriculum adoption is just really, really, really exciting. I think that we'll just continue to see in the years ahead the impact of that. And so I wanted to say thank you. And I also think I knew that you had used Unbound Ed because Tiana, I think you and I had talked about it for a second. But what I hadn't known, hang on a second. What I hadn't realized that every principal and AP had gone through the program, which just sounds really exciting. So thank you. I had a couple questions. One was on, is it possible to bring up the slides again? And could we go back to the one that shows that like flowchart diagram from like ultimate outcome back to like some of the key drivers? Great. And so then can you, on the far left where it says increase the percent of students above mastery of grade level content based on assessments from X to Y, can you talk about what the from X to Y is?
Yes, I'll let Emily go into detail. We did not require, so we just adopted the curriculum. We did not require the 2-week cycle assessments. They will be required next year. So we are collecting baseline data. What we did do this first year, we had some deep dive schools that did the 2-week cycle assessment. But what was important was to have real-time data. So having these 2-week cycle assessments across the district in reading and math will give us that real-time data that teachers can use then to deliver instruction based on what the kids need at that time. So that slide where Emily had the difference between acceleration and remediation, it's real-time data. So that's why that X is not there, because we didn't have baseline.
And just to add to that, we've adopted this curriculum. One of the key components of our adoption was the measurement within the curriculum. And so there are various assessment types in each curriculum that are sequenced every 2 weeks. And so we look forward to using those as temperature checks so that we can pivot, make changes, get better at what's working at a much more instructional pace over the year.
I think everything you shared makes sense. I think the reason I'm asking is I'm trying to figure out how we set a goal for where we want kids to be academically by the end of next year.
So we want to set a goal of making a 10% increase in our Ohio State data. And so we think by using these 2-week cycle assessments, then we'll be able to know whether we're on track and resource and support accordingly.
Okay. I think it was that 10% increase that I just wasn't connecting with this slide. Okay. I appreciate that. That is clarifying. I think I had one other just thought about this particular lower left-hand box, and then I had one other topic I wanted to raise. I just think this is really exciting and really smart, and I'm really very grateful that you all are approaching this issue of acceleration with this just regular window into how kids are doing. It seems like there could be a great opportunity in staff meetings, or I think, frankly, even full board meetings, to get updates on what those numbers are. Is that part of what the plan already is? And if not, we make it part.
Ben, you phased out a little bit. Can you repeat the last part about staff meeting getting to know?
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying I love what's on there, and I was asking, could we get updates on what those numbers are as we go through the year?
The data is used at the schoolhouse level for their data meetings. What we could possibly provide is kind of school-wide, and that's what we look at our, Performance Matters. And we're working with the dashboard system right now to see how to collect that data. But because it turns over every 2 weeks,
it's hard to get real time.
you know, it's
Yeah.
the real-time part.
Yeah.
So this data is really used to guide teachers planning and instruction.
But I would concur.
Sure, and I don't know that it would make sense for us to look every 2 weeks anyway at the board level, but I think once a month would be great.
Would quarterly be suffice, Ben? That kind of makes sense, or maybe semester? Quarterly, probably at least maybe 3/4 of the year.
It's not.
I think for me, Pam, can you all still hear me okay, or is the sound
Yes.
bad?
Yes.
I think for me, it depends on what the numbers say. You know, like if the numbers are showing that we're totally on track to our goal for the year, once a quarter sounds great. But if the numbers don't say that, I think we should be looking at them more frequently.
So we're all on the same page. We just had a meeting with Lauren Roberts, who is our internal auditor. We actually asked her to audit this work because we want to make sure we have a strong, reliable system. So we will provide whatever you like, but we are also working with our internal auditor to ensure that our data is reliable, credible, and accurate for you. So absolutely, you tell us what you need and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, and I think I would probably defer to you, Tiana, to figure out a system that you believe would work well. I think, and I'll be quiet after this. I think the reason I keep bringing it up is it is so clear that we have the right kinds of aspirations for kids and that our values speak to wanting to accelerate learning for everybody, particularly kids who have been most affected by COVID. I just think this is an opportunity to show that our outcomes are aligning with what our values are. And if for some reason they're not, we take it really seriously and we try to figure it out together. And so I'm excited about this. And Pam, I have a separate thing I want to ask about with tutoring, but I feel like I've been talking forever. So can I give it to you and Eve and then maybe go again in a little bit?
Yes, you are talking a lot, Ben. So no, you're not. Do you want to wait, or do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
I want to give somebody.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well then, nobody can say I didn't offer. Okay, so I think what I heard, I wanted to try to just paraphrase what I heard in the tutoring section, and then first check to make sure I heard it correctly. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I heard you say was that in the past, it's been hard to find good tutors, and that money often goes unspent, and so that the strategy we want to try instead is to leverage content specialists. Because we've seen some success with them in the past, and we think we'll have a better impact by going that route.
Well, I would also add that's our current model. So the data that you see with us going from 40% to 66%, that's what we've used, was the high dosage tutoring for reading specialists. So this is not a new concept for us. We have done this for the last few years because we could not secure high quality tutors.
Yep. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I would just add that I'd also looked at those third grade reading numbers in the past against the other Ohio urban districts, and it's genuinely really impressive what CPS has done. And so I just want to say thank you for that. So I think you were getting at what I was asking at Tiana. Like, is the idea then to expand that so we have more specialists than we had in the past?
Yes, so we've added 45 reading specialists through the CARES hours. So that was part of my closing. That's just so excited to have the human capital to move this work, because that's what we were lacking. So we are looking at these content specialists who are trained specifically in the science of reading to move this work for kindergarten and first graders. And we are using the high dosage model. We will continue to use that model because it yielded high results for us.
Yep. I mean, that sounds really, really exciting. And like the idea that it's scaling things that have worked in the past. I had two thoughts about it. One was, is there any concern about a funding cliff? With a part of why I liked the tutoring idea was, tutoring is not an FTE that we carry on our budget, but if we expand the number of specialists in 3 years, we're out of money. What happens? Do you have a thought about that? I'm not saying we shouldn't do it.
No, I think your initial reaction is accurate. Right? Those dollars are there to help close the gap. What happens when those dollars are gone? So yes, we see the cliff as well.
And honestly, we want to work the specialists out of that need. The stronger our tier 1 curriculum and instruction is, we get our kids caught up. Ideally, we won't need as many in the future.
And that's why we do the 80-20 model. That 20% of their time is supporting teachers and building their capacity for strong tier 1 instruction.
Okay, that's great. I mean, you all clearly thought about it and have an informed opinion and know more about it than I do, and I think that sounds great. I think the last just questions I had on this was, I get the sense that everybody in CPS is working as hard as they possibly can on 3 or 4 times the amount of work that a normal human being would do. And so if for a minute, some other organization were to come, I don't know what this organization is, I don't know that it exists yet, but just for a second, assume that there was some organization that said, we're willing to build a high dosage tutoring program for you. We're willing to recruit the teachers, we're willing to organize the logistics, we're willing to run the whole thing. Would we be interested in that? Not instead of the things you're describing, but in addition to.
I think the power of this work that is co-created with the people who are delivering the instruction, who are accountable and responsible for the instruction. I think we're always open to partners, but I think it's key that our own internal staff participate in this process and take ownership of this process. They know the kids, and I don't want to lose context of where our kids are. So open to partnerships, but I love that our principals and our teachers and our reading specialists are all at the table making decisions about our kids.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Very last seed I wanted to plant was, I know there are some other states and possibly some school districts that are trying a very different approach around tutoring, which is to basically give a report to parents, letting them know where their kids are academically, and giving them essentially a check that they can spend on whatever kind of, it has to be like a tutoring program, but that the parents could choose what kind of tutoring program they wanted for their kid, armed with information about where they were academically. Is that something we're thinking about? If not, why not?
So actually the state provided us with that model several years ago, and school principals were given resources for schools that weren't performing up to a certain state passing rate. And what we found is that really didn't work well. Families had a lot of barriers, sometimes in terms of getting their students to the providers. Some of the providers were not necessarily high quality, and it did not work well for our district.
Great. I mean, that's helpful history, Susan, that I don't think I knew, so I appreciate it. And I think the thing I like most about everything you've presented, and I really mean this and want to say thank you, is that it's just really clear that we're going to have information on what's working and what isn't because of the data. And so I'm excited to see how it goes, and I think this is just really great and want to say thank you.
Are you sure, Mr. Lindy?
You know I can always come up with more.
I know you can. I know you can.
And I want you all to know I'm away on vacation this week, but I wanted to be on for just this particular part of this meeting because of how important it is. And so I want to just thank everybody.
It is important. It is important. All righty. Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, thank you. And I think we want to really thank Lynn for, between last night and today, has given up part of 2 days of his vacation to be part of this. I think that's wonderful. And I appreciate his question. I have several things I'd like to suggest. And tell me if I'm speaking too loudly because I'm getting feedback. And are you getting feedback?
No.
No? Yes?
No.
No.
Okay. And you probably think at the end you need to talk to Rob because the sound is really bad from the room to us. And it was the last time I had to do this too. So Rob will figure it out later. But a couple things that I would suggest. I believe that the social studies curriculum preceded the timeline that Emily presented. Is that correct? Because it wasn't part of this Accelerate or whatever. That very first part.
The first year of implementation was 17-18. It was adopted in the year 16-17.
Okay, good. Could we look back at our first chart just to give you a little PR suggestion? The one that shows the timeline?
Yeah, I think Rob's pulling it up.
Yeah. Or the timeline of, yeah. So am I not reading, am I reading this correctly? That the social studies does not appear on there because it preceded when this is starting?
It's the first one.
It's the first one in year 2017, 2018.
Good. So you got the fine arts and you have social studies at 18. Was that fine arts and social studies part of this kind of this new focus that we have regarding Accelerate and what have you?
Yeah, that's a good question. The accelerated learning research just came out last summer.
Right.
And it emphasizes that those districts that adopted high quality curriculum were already on the path to accelerated learning.
Great, because that's something that, and I think you probably mentioned it, but that's something to be emphasized. This is sort of a PR and political thing before I get to the educational piece.
Okay.
I'm assuming that with things that are happening nationwide, and we've been addressing them, particularly as it pertains to race and some of the great stuff that you've all been doing in specialized courses and impact courses, if you want to call them that. I'm suggesting that this chart is helpful, that even before we had the Accelerate piece, we were already kind of on that mark. And I'm going to say that when we present this or when we talk to our staff about this, we have to anticipate that there will be political questions as well as educational and curricular and social questions about the high school, the K-12, if you will, the K-12 social studies curriculum. It is a political hot potato in Columbus and throughout the country, and we have to be able to address it. For example, we are proud of being able to use as a tool and part of our kind of a quiver of opportunity, if you will, the 1619 project. You know that there's a dialogue right now in Columbus about critical race theory and whatever. I just want everyone that ever shares about curriculum is able to say how progressive the social studies curriculum is, because I believe it's the most progressive in the state that I'm familiar with, and that's about at least 30 or 40 districts. So I just want that to always be a focus, because that's where not only in a campaign year like this one is for school board, but also for the interest in the communities that we serve, to be ready to talk about social studies curriculum in that way, especially as it addressed the 1619 and critical race, and be able to talk about that we started down that road already before it was politically acceptable or politically influence to do so. That's just and political. Mr. Lindy raised the issue about the funding cliff. We won't be able to absorb 45 folks in 2 years. So that is a problem because and the answer is this, and it's not a good answer, but when Mrs. Ronan and staff decided to stop spending money on one giant thing that we were spending it on, in part partnerships that were doing tutoring or partnerships that were out there getting money through us from the state and others. We suspended all of that and instead made a strategic decision to invest in those reading specialists. And you all have gotten results doing that. So usually something this big does mean that we stop doing something else that big. And just because, as Ben mentioned, and we all were talking about it, just because we can afford it now, we can't afford it later. And so we have to be careful how we're going to absorb it, but we have to absorb it by not doing something else eventually. Not this coming year necessarily, but certainly down the road. And could I ask a real question about this? I'm always impressed about the third grade. So is the public. Is it possible that gap that we see when we compare ourselves to the state, it's pretty impressive. And certainly when we compare ourselves to our sisters and brothers in the other urbans, it's very impressive. I mean, people talk about how impressive it is, but it in part goes back to that original strategic decision to go to reading specialists. Do we have statistics that demonstrate our gap between our Caucasian kids and our non-Caucasian kids, our Black and brown kids, that gap that we have at CPS? Are there statistics or similar graphs that show what the gap is statewide? Not just comparing ourselves to other districts, but what's the gap in the other urbans? What's the state gap? Because I think that would be also kind of interesting. I remember seeing it years ago, and they were even kind of comparing males to females, and that there was even a couple of years where we said there wouldn't be a gap if indeed certain kids, whether it was guys developing later or whatever. That would be interesting, I think, for the board to look at, is how are we doing comparatively to the state and comparatively to similar districts with the gap that exists. I think that.
Yes. Did that for you. That's all on the state report card. Two things that's not in the slide that I would like to share. One is the K3 measure, moving from an F to a C, and continuing to move up. Our goal is to move that C to a B. And then the last report card we have for the annual measurable objective, we went from an F to a B on that. So we have to get that information out. It is public information. I'm going to ask Emily if you can work with Connie to look at demographic data and compare it to other districts. But just looking at ours solely, there has been some really good gains in the last few years.
I completely buy it as both a person that's been super interested in curriculum these last several years and super curriculum. I'm super interested in a report card piece. And I think we've avoided some things that could have been bad by not having the last few years. It gives us a lot more to be more innovative. I would love to see that, as well as that comparison of gap and the racial gap regarding achievement with our contemporaries and the state. And one last thing. I am so glad you're using the internal auditor. She's great. She's smart. We need to use her more in academic issues as well as staffing issues. But the way you have to phrase it is that you have to ask her, suggest to her to do it, but she then has to ask for the ability to do it from the community audit committee. because they adopt her year's work. Now, the board can intercede and say, please do this, but it's just a matter of asking. And because she is on a pretty tough schedule that way, and actually reports generally to no one except them, unless under certain circumstances. I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. But I would just word it that see if she can get her audit committee to agree that that should be part of her work this coming year. If I don't know, say yes. Just diplomatic. That's all.
Thank you.
You bet.
All righty. Well, everybody has said quite a lot, so I'm going to be quick, Emily. Very good comments. I did
Now,
like.
wait, I was good. I was
You were
good.
good. You were good. You were good.
Yes, thank you.
I like when you point out that this whole concept is designed to disrupt a system. And I like that because we do need to do things differently, but I also like how you broke up more strength-based focus with the acceleration versus the remediation. That was good for me to see, since we're all focused on how to build from what we're doing right or what's going well. I agree. I would like to see that chart that Ms. Bolton noted about the difference with the gaps, because that's key, especially speaking to the community. And I don't know how come we can't get our positive information out to the community fast, like with the AMOs and how we move from an F to a B. That's huge, especially in the urban district. And she's right. It's very impressive how we're doing and progressing in reading compared to the state. The only other comment that I had about this was, wrote this down somewhere. Yeah, I can't find it. Well, maybe I remember. But I would go with, when Mr. Lindy was asking about the monthly, I think we should go with quarterly updates, because I know how hard it is with real time and the turnaround for 2 weeks. Was that what we were doing when the kids first came back into the building, those first few weeks? Were we setting that baseline? Was this a collaboration with summer scholars too, when teachers could start, or is that in preparation for August? When we came back 5 days a week?
Good question.
When we were doing the assessment, or the cycle assessments, was that when they first came back in the beginning of the fourth quarter?
So in fourth quarter, we did our readiness assessments like MAP
Mhm.
and our state assessments. But our deep dive schools that we've been working on these 2-week cycles all year, we've done it since the beginning.
Beginning of the year, okay. All right. All right, that's all the comments I have. Thank you. All right, summer scholars, and this is just an update. Well, I don't know, are you reporting, Ms. Murphy, who's reporting on summer scholars?
I thought we were going to discuss questions from the memo.
Okay, well, the question I have, and I was hoping I would get that. It's not a report, you're right, it's a question. Where are we with our enrollment for summer scholars, and is it specific to, is it specialized in certain school buildings for early childhood? And then family accessibility, because we've been getting a lot of emails from parents who kids could not get in preschool at their school, but was not sure where they were supposed to be going. And I just want to kind of an update on what those numbers look like for our preschoolers.
Okay, I will have to get exact numbers for you, but I did talk to Vera Brooks, the director of preschool this morning, and she said that the families that had, so the timeline was they had reached out finding interest, and there wasn't interest, so we didn't have a teacher at Evanston, was the one that was cited. And now we do have a teacher, and we do have 5 or 6 students who have been coming because of the most recent request. So her team has figured out space for those families that reached out after the initial interest was out.
Okay. Do you have any questions about that, Eve? Or I don't know if Ben is still on the phone or not.
I don't have a.
I'm here and don't have any questions.
Okay. I don't necessarily have a question about preschool. I know that Brooks was doing an awful lot of outreach and a pretty intense outreach, frankly. But I'm glad that particular issue got cleared up. I have an issue just on summer scholar. Two things. One of our little people and her friends are enjoying it greatly, which is good. And another part of our little family has been told that there's a wait list at her school and they can't really accommodate her. I thought that was weird. Is that, are there wait lists at summer scholars?
What we did is we got student interest in March and April and staffed accordingly. After that enrollment deadline, we have had families who have reached out, and individual buildings have worked out whether they had those extra seats available. To the school that you referenced earlier, that principal is working through the final names. Right now, I'm just going to reach back out to me if she's not able to seat those students, and I will work with schools close to her to see if we can get them in at a different site.
Oh, thank you. So the enrollment stopped April or mid-April or? I'm sorry, did you say anything?
Mid-April. It stopped mid-April.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thanks for that.
All right, thank you. All right, IB, stay on this to be.
Hello. It's good to see you all, and thank you for asking us to be here today. Thank you to Mrs. Bowers and Ms. Bolton and Mr. Lindy if he is still here. I have some limited numbers of print copies. If anybody needs another one, please let me know. I'm really grateful to have Principal Beauchamp here, and I would be remiss if I did not point out the hard work that principals have been doing to make all of our 3 prior topics really come to life and sing. And just one small example of how we hope to have long-term impact on our young kids' reading is that we are really pushing our principals to educate themselves about the science of reading. They are getting continual PD. And right here to my right, Principal Beauchamp himself studied up on Wit and Wisdom first grade and delivered a lesson. And just so that he could empathize with his teachers and understand from the inside what that experience feels like. So that is to say everybody's working super hard on all of these, and we're really proud of the principals for that. So with International Baccalaureate, we have several updates. Many of these are celebratory. Some of those are a heads up about what the board might expect to see next. And we just so much appreciate SAC support on this endeavor all along. It's sort of like the little project that could. Also, this started out, if you remember, with this idea around the West Side expansion. We had a lot of issues we were trying to address. Today is mostly on International Baccalaureate, but I did include a little update on some of these other pieces that we're trying to work with as well. So without further ado, Rob, if you wouldn't mind, what International Baccalaureate is looking like right now at CPS is that we are highly aligned with the CPS strategic plan and its call to action, especially when we think about it as how student-centered IB is. We believe strongly, and we've seen this year, that the qualities in an International Baccalaureate learner are very similar to the hopes and aspirations that we have for all of our CPS students. Next slide. What we are doing is we are embarking on really a 1 to 5 year project to have full implementation. So this is our KDD for the IB component. Some of these pieces we are still filling in, but I went ahead and put in bold blue at the top those projects that we have been able to complete within the first year. So we have established collaborative staff PD in IB. This is largely due to the, frankly, the hard work of our principals, but also we have an IB coordinator for our NYP program who has been fantastic at bringing Data and Robert's staff together. We're continuing that in collaboration with our curriculum team. This summer, they're actually writing units together. So this is just a wonderful opportunity to do that. We have designed and launched French and Spanish courses in grades 6 through 8. Sarah Morales has been a total champion in helping that, and the board is, we hope, supported all of that. I think the final budget is coming through. What I love about that particular project is it was infectious. So we're finding more and more alignment between Data High School and West High. So West High also is going to be providing world languages for all of their 7th and 8th grade their students, which is just phenomenal. That doubles the number of schools that are providing world languages for their junior high students. So whereas it was Walnut, Gamble, Clark, and then those K through 8 language schools, now we're adding to that pile Robert, Data, and West High. So super excited about that. We have a 6-fold, you'll see this coming down further. We have increased our EL student enrollment in AP classes tremendously from 5 qualifying this year to pre-tests that have identified 33 for next year. So we're, I don't want to call that quite done because we have just, I think, gotten into our correct assessments, and we anticipate this to keep growing over the next several years. Mr. Beauchamp has done a nice deep dive on his MAP scores and is going to present a little bit or share with us about the student outcomes in ELA and math at Roberts. And Data, some of this is just, we're kind of right in the thick of doing our data analysis, but I'll turn it over to Principal Beauchamp to speak to that.
So thank you for inviting me here board for your support of us. This, what Dr. Blaze is referring to, I did just focus on our ELA scores. We have, on average, have been able to increase in our middle school about 28%, or about a third of our students who are performing at the 50th percentile or higher, which is our target. It has been what we have been focusing on in our data meetings, and I think it's was referenced earlier with those 2-week cycles. We had our teachers utilizing those assessments to drive data. So with regards to the International Baccalaureate and this on our middle school team, which is doing the deep dive work with the IB most intensely, we've seen some improvement. So we're we are not done yet either, and we have much more work to do. But to see that increase is very rewarding and very inspiring for what's going to happen.
We're still getting yeah, thank you. So then we've got a couple other projects, and we're continuing to move those forward. So our strategy with International Baccalaureate takes some lessons from international baccalaureate programs globally, but also right here at home in CPS. So we know that we have had IB diploma program at Withrow specifically, and when I interviewed the former principals there, Mr. Daniels in particular said he really felt like it needed some kind of feeder program. So we've adopted a strategy of starting in the middle, branching up, and rooting down. So starting in the middle, we've completed our first year of middle year program. Every single student participated, which is, as we understand from our IB peers, actually not just unusual, but pretty radical. So we just thought it was the right thing to do and continue forward with that strategy. All of our first year accreditation steps have been completed, so we are absolutely on track to complete the accreditation process. And we have, like as I stated earlier, identified several ways to have collaborative PD across the 2 school buildings, which frankly is always fun. So next steps are to continue to train staff and to build out the curriculum alignment between our standards-based curriculum and the IB learner profiles. And see on the right, these are pictures from the 8th grade personal project, which is one of the requirements. The kids were just so excited. Parents were flowing into the school on this day. It was a good old school trifold exhibition. And I got teared up, right? I mean, it was all the kids, they were socially distanced, and they were so proud of their work. Everywhere you go at Roberts and at Data, you see evidence of the learner profiles. So we just have some here from an ESL classroom. I'm a thinker because I always think before I act. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of these all over the schools. Al was just sending me some more. So next slide. What I've been trying to do in managing this program and leading it is I'm trying to go through the IB accrediting or educating process myself a couple years ahead. So this week I completed the head of school training for the diploma program and the career tech program or the career program last summer. What I'm trying to do is give you all a heads up about what's coming down the pike and just kind of knowing what we're going to be needing to look for. So career program is highly aligned with sort of global trends where after the 10th grade, students really start to focus in their attention on what they want to do with the rest of their lives, how they want to make a positive impact. At the IB level, all career program students also take courses in the traditional diploma program. And so there's lots and lots of crossover between those two. We also know that the diploma program courses are offered at sort of the general level, which would be aligned with our grade level standard. So we've started the crosswalk process with that, and we can see if we continue the good work that our friends in the curriculum department are doing, that will meet the standards for the core basic level of the diploma program. And then we have the accelerated or the honors program, which is calibrated with our AP programs. So about 3 years from now, we can expect our students at Dater, or we hope that our students at Dater will be able to be the inaugural class to take those IB diploma program exam-based courses. And we are, of course, starting really far ahead because that requires training, it requires buy-in, it requires vision, and it requires students who have been getting high-quality, standards-based grade-level curriculum all the way along so that when they find a subject that they love and want to accelerate in, they have access to that. We are going to need, it is a requirement of IB to have a coordinator for each program. So we'll be coming back to you for that next year so that they can ensure that those IB diploma program exam-based courses will be credited by the IB Global Agency. So there's just a little bit of a ladder effect we need to take care of there. Continue to train staff. Probably we'll have an exploratory voluntary crew from our 11th and 12th grade teachers. Start to take some of those classes and spread the good word and make some recommendations about who else should be trained. We are going to phase in those IB assessments, and we are looking at adding additional career pathways, which I'll address on a later slide. So next slide. Rooting down, we're learning more and more. So we are currently exploring what K-5 might look at like at Roberts Academy. This is called the Primary Years Program. And one of the things we're finding is the younger the students are, the bigger the instructional shifts. So it may be that that we don't do PYP at Roberts. It may be that we embrace it and do it wholly. But there's a lot more to do than some short-term training and alignment with the standards and learner profiles. So because of that, the LSDMC at Roberts has asked for a second exploratory year rather than applying for accreditation this year. And we're very comfortable with that. Roberts is still a global academy, global focused community, yeah. And all that fits in beautifully with IB. So we definitely, especially after this year, want to give the primary team plenty of space to explore so they feel really confident about whatever direction they choose. What that means, though, is that we do have a small number of primary teachers volunteering to go through some of that staff training. Of course, with virtual training, it's much less expensive than sending them to Amsterdam or something like that. So that's good. We're able to support that. We are really hopeful that we can do some PYP site visits so we can see like how different is this actually, and building out community engagement with the families at Roberts and Dater. Roberts in particular is just wonderfully supported by Clicky. They are really excited about the promise for this, and so all of that is going to continue. And then, as I mentioned before, we will also want to collaborate with the curriculum department. We've already done some preliminary crosswalks on both Wit and Wisdom and the math curriculum, and they fit really nicely. I don't think we'd have to do much at all to change that. We just might, the teachers might get creative with some units and projects. Next slide. So other West Side expansion parts that we have also been moving along. We have added 4.5 FTE teachers. They have been hired at LEAP, Roberts, Stater, and as I mentioned, West High. There's a 3-fold increase in heritage language courses. That is really fantastic. That means, as a reminder, that our students who come to us speaking another language have the opportunity to build up their formal skills in that language so that they can kind of join their other language peers. I know that's all Sarah Morales. She's been incredible. And a 6-fold increase in heritage speakers who meet the prereqs for AP language exams. So just lots of kudos on the world languages front. The West High, Dater High situation is we are on target for our right sizing goals. And really excited to say that Principal Madison and Principal Blair have been able to align their bell schedules so that West High and Dater students will be able to cross-register in Career Tech. This was a really big recommendation from Mike Turner, who is the Career Tech manager, and we were able to meet with all the principals and with both principals and Mike and have that work out. And he was able to help us understand how what the staffing impact would be. We're super excited that we've been able to add an electrical apprenticeship program at West High and Dater. Mr. Turner was instrumental in that. Everybody worked really hard on that. And I believe that's fully enrolled at about 15 kids. I don't know, Ms. Murphy, if you have more information about that. But last I heard, it was about evenly split. It's a really high quality, frankly, high paying program for students. We were able to, next year, we'll be able to complete the public safety pathway so kids can enter at the entry point and exit at a really high level EMT program. And we are sort of next on deck looking at polling the students in the community, but we think that we're looking at IT, computer science, and entrepreneurship opportunities, but the kids will also continue to lead us down what career path they want. Next slide, let's see the last slide. Okay, so our timeline, we're still on a 5-year plan to have International Baccalaureate fully accredited so that our students can thrive. You can see the details there, but basically the short story is we're on track to do what we need to do to meet the requirements of International Baccalaureate.
Any questions? Committee members? Thank you, Ms. Blake. That was good. I got a lot of questions.
I tried to make it quick.
Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate you giving credit to Quickie because this really began as their idea to have a IB, basically, K-12, which is very exciting. I have a couple of questions. It looks good on the west side as we begin to look at, as you're looking at Roberts as the feeder for Dater, is that correct?
Yes.
And it's my understanding, last time we spoke with the superintendent prior to her departure, we were also including, as you referenced, a west and east side math, correct?
Yes, I heard the question. I guess we are looking to see the appropriate time to raise that. It is a program change, so that would need to flow through the LSTMCs, as you know. So we're letting the dust settle on a challenging year, but what's really good, I think, is that the way we've approached it on the west side has given us a clear structure for how to approach it in any other school that might want to join.
Well, I think that what's going to evolve in the district is that what we're offering on the east side, we offer on the west side. And that is a several-year effort. And I think that you do have at least 2 schools that would be good feeders that I think both go K-8 or PK-8, and that would be AMI and AWL. And to my recollection, years ago, the only high school that had IB was Withrow. I wouldn't think that you were starting at ground zero on the east side like you had to start on the west side, not because they have any experience with it, but because of your experience on the west side. It seems to me that it would be reasonable to get a jump start on the east side more quickly than you've been able to do it on the west side, because I think you've done exactly right on the west side, but I think that experience can inform, as you mentioned, the east side development. And whether it's, I would assume it would be Withrow, but it, you have other schools over there too. But Withrow has a significant international clientele as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I would also say that in these sorts of matters, the ILT, and I know this is not good to say, but this is a district-wide initiative. District-wide initiatives cannot be stopped by any school, regardless, by LSDMCs or by ILTs or by principals. And this has been a district-wide initiative as we develop. So I think some of that, it's great to start to expose people to the possibility. And I would think that you'll start to see in some of the post-COVID budgets and maybe even the COVID budget that this would be an opportune time to think about moving forward, at least with the preliminary sharing of the concept on the east side. It's very rare that something got to start on the west side, and I think that's fabulous. And I think the east side could benefit from what we've learned on the west side. And I would suggest that all of those 3 schools I just mentioned on the east side would benefit greatly. And I like the way you just said about starting in the middle. I think that's very good. And that also could be facilitated by AMI and AWL, if I understand that they go to 8th grade. That's what I think.
Yes, and one way that we've tried to pave the way for that without rocking too many boats or causing too many brains to explode in this year is we did prefigure how world languages could flow. So we are trying to make sure that those capabilities in world language that we've got a long range plan for that. And so we did include AMI and AWL in those in terms of understanding where the language proficiency might land and how they might flow together if we were to do more collaboration across programs.
I buy that, and I buy also the AMI and AWL, just like Roberts is one of our global schools.
Yes.
Or 2 of our global schools. So again, you start at a different place, but I think you're going to be getting some sense of urgency about this more than you might anticipate. But I think it's great. I'm excited about it. And I think this will be beneficial. And I think there's a sense of wanting to accelerate on a number of fronts. The age of moving fast is more than encouraging too. So thank you.
Is Mr. Lundy still on the phone? Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Beauchamp and Ms. Blaze for that. The only question I have, and I agree with, one comment. Board Member Bolton expressed the urgency to accelerate and to move fast, but I want to reiterate the importance of community buy-in, and it makes it easier. So massaging that a little bit more, what you said you've already kind of thought about that and how that would look, because I don't want to cut out that feedback and the commitment from the LSMC and the IMT, inclusively. But I think beginning to talk about that for the East Side would be ideal. The question I have is the public safety. Is there a certification for public safety pathway?
For EMT,
Yes.
yes, and then we also have the firefighter that started this year.
Right?
Yes, thank you.
That is adding junior year, then the following year, senior year.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that.
We're also trying to create a pre-apprenticeship at that firefighter level, and we're working with Cincinnati Fire to be our lead partner in that work.
Okay,
I
good.
think we're close.
And the only other question I have, Ms. Blaze, is about the primary years. You talked about the teachers wanting to have like another year because it will be a entire curriculum shift. When you say site visits, where would those site visits be? Is there other schools in the state that are doing that we're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, so we've have relationships with, for example, Oberlin School District.
Okay.
So they are just up 75, and they're K-12. Their demographics are slightly different than ours. I don't think anyone in the district is quite what we have, but they are a more moderate to low income area, and they have IB K through 12. We have relationships there. That would be my first thought. We also have relationships with Purcell in the area.
Well, they just
Superintendent
started.
Murphy,
So they
stomping
started
grounds,
IB at
but-
Purcell Marion? Okay.
But Purcell's a high school, so
Right.
the truth is, and I remind my staff all the time that we are trailblazers with the primary years piece and the middle years piece here in the Southwest Ohio. So, we would be looking up north to make some of those visits.
And one of the amazing things about IB is it's massive. There's 5,000 schools all over the world, and as we all go get trained, so there's 2 or 3 dozen teachers now who have gone through training or more, including all the admins. We're making connections because it's all virtual. So now we know, there's a school that's been recommended to us in DC. So as the world starts to open up a little more, and with some of those cheap Allegiant tickets, maybe we can go check out some of these other places in other urban centers.
And that was a core tenet of our global community focus, was building relationships with sister schools.
Mhm.
So right before COVID, we had started to have relationships with a school in Puebla, Mexico, and in, I believe it was a city in Egypt. But then we had to shut it down. But we expect to get back to doing that. And now that we have IB to really accelerate that work, we have a whole network. And to Board Member Bolton's comment about the urgency, our primary teachers, would like to have another year to really learn this. We've already got a third who are like, but I'm ready, Mr. Coach, right now. So about a third of them have been taking training this May. We have some, that was last month. Now, this June, we have a few more who was doing it in June, and they're excited. And I expect early August and October, when they share out what they learned, and the rest of the staff, I expect that there will be more who are going to want to come on board. Plus, we have new staff coming in the building. They were excited about it in their interviews. They're going to want to get training. I can see another 10 or 12 who's going to want to do the training in the fall. So the excitement is there, and the sense of urgency is on. So.
Thank you, and that's exciting to hear. I'm glad that the teachers are excited that I'm ready to jump in and do it. But the one third. The question I also have around measure outcome progress. That would be huge when we're introducing that to the East Side. When that starts, if we have something that we can show progressive progress or effects of this programming. Do we have measures that we can?
So that is something that the QI program, QI Erin, is going to help us develop those measures. Performance Matters has not been our friend this week, but we are expecting to be able to dig into things as simple as what's the difference between Data high school outcomes in 2019 and 2021. We just couldn't get there. Try.
Okay. But I think that's going to be a stronger kind of thing when you start introducing and fast forwarding on the East Side too.
I can tell you that discipline data at Data Middle School I mean, across the district, obviously, with hybrid and distance has been lower.
Yeah.
But just, we did some very significant work at Data just prior to bringing Ivy on. And just walking through the hallways, seeing the students collaborating, seeing them smiling and working with each other, with the teachers as their guides, it's noticeable, consistent, and regular. So even when I bring in a guest who came with me a year ago, but right before the pandemic, and then again today, or this week, he's like, this is a different school. Something is happening here.
Okay.
And so it really is palpable. We can't wait to see the results follow the instruction.
Yeah. Okay.
Those approaches to learning, it's mentioned in Dr. Blaze's KDB, those will be things that we use as measures. And those are these overarching themes that are interwoven into the IB lessons. So those are already built-in assessments that happen. So much like the 2-week cycles in our general curriculum, with our IB curriculum, there are already those kind of benchmarking pieces that are directly connected to the IB approach, and that's all seen through these things called approaches to learning. So those are specific skills that are teased out throughout the year.
Okay. So can't wait to see that quantitative data. That'd be good to see. Last thing, teacher training for us to look forward to and have heads up about the honors program and that training. How significantly different is that than AP training for a teacher, or even do we have even AA training? I don't even know there's advanced AA training courses that teachers take. But how much different is this training than the AP?
Yeah, they're actually fairly similar. So we're just starting to learn about what that would look like. So our goal would be to send 1 or 2 teachers to volunteer to go out and see what that looks like. So Glenetta Kraus is somebody, she's a advanced level teacher at Data and has worked in the AP program. She's like, I'll do the IB training, and so we'll learn. But from what I understand, they're very similar. I mean, it really is a sort of just a global version of being able to advance out of college level classes. It serves the same function, actually.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any more questions, Ms. Bolton?
I just have one follow-up, something that was said about Mr. Turner had worked out a way for cross-registration between West High and Data.
So Mr. Turner came over to consult with Ms. Madison and Dr. Blair, and to help them understand, yes, you can cross-register like a Data High student at a West High class. And so he helped with the master scheduling, but also with the teacher credentials, which is so critical with career tech.
So specific examples would be, in the past, the culinary students were only Data students. And this goes to guidance you guys have already given us to start doing some of this cross-school work. Another example, the EMT and the firefighter program, yes, that was built for Western Hills, but can Data students participate? Yes.
So sometimes that's just as simple as don't schedule them during lunchtime. It's just first, second, 6th, and 7th. But the 7-bell day will be critical for maintaining this.
Right, and it is going to be built in, as I understand it, into the budget, and already has been, that there will be no high school that has only 6 periods. So it'll either be 7 or 8, and that's critical. That's an equity issue. The reason I'm raising it is that it would be really good for, maybe this is an action item, Madam Chair, for Mr. Moyne to meet with Mr. Turner and whomever, because we've been pushing this for some time, as you mentioned, about dual enrollment or what have you, registration, or people able to go to the zoo school and not leave their home school. I mean, I think our career path is going to be dependent upon that kind of fluidity, but I think General Counsel would be informed by how you guys have done what you've done.
Mr. Turner brought that up, that it's been something that they've been trying to do. Of course, it's so much easier when the kids just walk down the hallway. So we're testing it out this year, and, yeah.
It's about IRNs and ENs. And that's, if we've overcome that, and we must overcome it. But I would really hope that Mr. Chalmer and certainly the assistant superintendent would meet with general counsel, because he's lived through the nightmare of the COVID thing where we had kids go back and forth from the VA to their home school, and I guess there was a lot of battling about that. But it'd be great if there's a path forward, no pun intended, a career path, but that please somebody meet with him because he's reporting back to policy this month.
I will, sure.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thanks, Monica.
I'm sure it's not.
Any other questions? Committee member Bolton?
No, just a couple, just two things to raise in other.
And Chair Bowers?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought I got a communique that the committee wanted Danny to come back and provide an update about College Credit Plus. What's that on there? It's not on the agenda, but I'm pretty sure I got an email with that request earlier.
Okay, well,
But if this is not a good time, it's late in the afternoon.
that was, can we table it?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll table this, but I'll keep this. Don't print anymore.
Okay.
I'll keep this. Are you okay with that, committee member Bolton? It was an
Yes,
update on college credit. I think it was more about cost savings and things like that, now that I can remember.
Yeah, we're cool.
We can do this in August.
Honestly, if you just want to sit with the data, that's fine too. I don't feel a need to present it.
Yes,
but
I
I'm more
apologize.
numbers
Yeah, I think it was something about cost and benefits and how many people were taking the course, and I remember that.
She has it all here.
Okay.
Whatever you decide, we're good.
Are you good with keeping it just for review, Miss Bolton?
Yeah.
Those was the other packet that we already have, but
Yeah.
this is more detailed specifically to that. And I apologize. I still like your math. It's still good.
I learned a lot today.
Thank you for this. We'll keep it
Okay.
and review it. But I do remember that. Miss Bolton, you had something in other?
Yeah, I have three things for other, and it's nothing necessarily to discuss, but I'm just doing it from a budget issue because these pertain to student achievement. Number one, an update on how many success centers are being proposed to be budgeted.
Per school, at the schools?
Yeah, how many success centers or how many high schools are getting success centers?
So the success centers, my understanding is we were taking a look at that at all of the high schools, but I'm not sure what made the final cut. I could find that out and share that with the committee.
That would be good because there is support of them being in all of the high schools. So if you could find out, that would be great.
Yeah.
I know we're getting close to this budget thing. The other question I have is that I understand there's been, we're reducing the number of employment specialists
Yes,
that were.
yes, ma'am. Yes, we had originally asked for one for all of the schools, and that too may be compromised to 7, I think was the number.
Is it possible to look at employment specialists being able to cover more than one school?
So there was one case where we talked about having one person split 2 schools. My opinion is just like a teacher or a counselor, it really is best practice to have one person honed in on the type of employment that that individual school is looking for. So Mike Turner and I did have a conversation about splitting them all out. We will do what the will of the board is, of course.
But I trust your judgment more than mine on that. I just feel like if we don't, I mean, I know that the cut's already there, and I know high schools usually pay a big price in budget because there's such an emphasis on the earliest grades in this district. And I know that there's a philosophy that this is not part of what we're supposed to be doing. Well, I don't believe that's the philosophy of the board. I think the board thinks that we're supposed to be a PK 16, if you will, in many ways. But even if it's like the high schools that are in the K-8s, or if those, I mean, maybe look at it so we might have a better chance of funding more of it.
Yes, all right. Thank you for your support. Of course, I really would like all of them, but.
But, can I jump in?
Please.
Regarding this career success centers, was there a determining factor on how that's determined? You're gonna look into it,
Yeah.
but the same way that the specialists are identified, how is that determined?
So the employment specialist would be, the ideal is 1 per high school, so 16 people. The Success Center, from my understanding, modeled after what Walnut has done successfully. I believe they had 4 teachers in their Success Center, I believe, in core content areas. So 4 teachers times the 16 high schools. Oh, that's what I believe I know.
I can look up the teachers by high school, but you're right, it was modeled after Walnut, and I don't know what was determined about it, but I'll look up.
So that's the to find out factor was what
Yes.
schools, but the 7, how do you determine what schools get the 7?
Well, so what I did was I said, okay, let's start with those who expressed deep interest. So I put out a survey, and those who responded,
Okay.
I said, okay, I have the buy-in of the principal,
Okay.
and it's not forced on them. We're going to make this work. So that's how those first 7 were determined.
Okay.
However,
I would just be interested in seeing what 7 those were.
I can share. I can
That
tell
would
you
be
those
good.
7.
Yeah.
I could probably tell you. West High, Woodward, Withrow, SCPA. I was very happy about. Clark, I believe. I'll email them to you, so I'll
Okay.
tell you the right ones.
And
Okay.
the Success Center model was 2 general education teachers, 1 ELA and math, and an intervention specialist.
So 3 teachers total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. On that, this panel, I go back on this a lot, and that is, I think the key to Walnut was how they identified the students, but they also brought into play a group called Mind.
Mhm.
And I believe firmly that if you not contract out to a certain extent or get that program or get that person out, these success centers will not work as much as they can. So I really love the contact. Pam, what's the name?
I have to look it up, but I have the information in my phone or either on my iPad. But I can.
I'm really supportive of that program.
Okay. I'm not familiar with fine print, but we can dig
I can
into
get
it.
you the information.
Okay.
I can get her the information.
Thank you, would you? I appreciate it. And then my last, I promise. I think part of the budget issues that we are facing might be able to be addressed if we think more broadly about how we can use CDA. I think there are things that can be absorbed at CDA that would cost less and take some of the burden off of the school site. So I'd love to have the smart people think about that, because I think that's going to be a good strategy. Where, well, maybe everything that's remote is CDA, even if it's from your home school. It might be a staffing issue. There's just some things that we could really expand the vision of CDA. Just to be thinking about it.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Good point. All righty. No other business. Meeting adjourned. We're done. Happy
Thank
weekend.
you.